You can change the size of them, adjust the amount of toppings, and randomize the colors. I present you the donut tutorial. The procedural donut tutorial. So let's get started. Now let's open the geometry nodes tab. Let me just resize this a bit. Here we are dealing with a cube which has 8 vertices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But the amount of vertices we're gonna need, it's gonna be more than 8. It should be very detailed first so that we can set the position for each of those vertices. So I'm gonna add a grid. Where we can customize the amount of vertices we want. And let me just quickly turn this up 100. And we can always change the size of the X and Y. So I'm just gonna change both of them to 2. Just why not? And now, since we have a grid, I want to change the position of this grid so that our mathematical expression, that is this one, or the 3 coordinates X, Y, and Z, matches with the equation of the torus. So let me do the same. So how do you take an expression like this and then you map onto something like a grid? You do that with a set position node. So I did the set position, but nothing happens because you haven't described what's going to happen yet. So let me just plug in position into the position. Nothing happened. Well, let me take the vector, position vector, and resolute it into X, Y, and Z axis. So we can do that with separate X, Y, Z node. Well, now you see there's nothing over here because you plugged the input of X into the position. We don't need that. We need the position vector. We have to deal with each of these resolution vectors separately for this to work. So I'm going to combine them with the combine X, Y, Z node. And I'm just going to plug Y, Z in here so that it just shows up perfectly. And then so now, if you look at these formulas, they're depending on 2 variables, theta and your phi. And it also depends on the capital R, which is your outer radius, and the small r, which is your inner radius. Let me quickly make up values for theta and phi. So here, there are 3 variables which we can use, in which one of them is theta. So let me just annotate them quickly. Who's going to be a theta, and Y is going to be a phi, and these ones are your regular X, Y, Z nodes. So now let me take the Y and theta and phi and plug it into X, Y, Z's. To do that, we're going to use something known as a math node. Math node is so similar to the Python math module. So here we are going to take the theta and we're going to take the cosine of it. So I'm going to do the same. If you click on this drop down box, you can get a cosine function over here. So I'm just going to click on it. We're just going to drag it over here. You can see the output over here. By pressing M, I can see the before and after variations. You can't see much happening over here, but trust in the process. So, and this cos theta now is multiplied by the inner radius, so-called R. So where do we get the R from? We can directly plug it from the geometry input to group input. And to do that, we have to multiply it because R is multiplied with R cos theta. So I'm going to get M to multiply. And then I'm going to take this input, I'm going to plug it into the value. So now I can just change whatever you want, and then you can see the change that is appearing in your viewport. So I don't want it to be named as well. I know it's inner radius, so I'm going to name it inner radius. With that. So it's just R cos theta. We have R cos theta right now, and we need to add it with the capital R, which is the outer radius. So I'm going to do the same process again, but now I'm going to add with the outer radius. Again, I'm going to change the between as outer radius. Now, we can see the entire thing, r plus capital R plus small r cos theta is being multiplied by cosine of phi. We're going to follow the same process. We're going to take the cosine function. And here is your phi value. So I'm going to just plug this in here. I'm just going to multiply this with cosine of phi. Let's take a look at the results. We can already see the x-axis of the torus forming over here. And we need to do the same thing with the y-axis and your z-axis. Doing that is easy because we already have r plus r sine theta. We just need to multiply with the sine of phi. To do that, let me quickly duplicate this. Make it the sine of phi, make sure. And then I'm going to duplicate the multiplied node. Now I'm going to take the r plus r sine theta. This is your r plus r sine theta. Plug it over here. And now take the sine. Just plug it into your y. You can see it's deforming in two different directions. Now here comes the fun part. We need it in the z direction. That's z of theta comma phi, which is your r of sine theta. So let me take the sine function again. Let me input the theta in the sine function. Now I need this to be multiplied by r. So this is your inner radius. So I'm going to take this and then this. I'm going to multiply them. I'm going to give it to the z output. Let's take a look at how this looks like. This is a torus, but it doesn't quite look like a torus. Why? You didn't give the grid enough size for it to deform into a torus. So if I give it enough size, I'm guessing it's 2 times pi, which is tau. So I'm just going to TAU. I'm just going to type TAU and press enter. So there we go. That's your torus. So what we did over here is we implemented a geometrical formula, and then we took those theta and we set the position of the grid into these formulas. Very good. So good so far. Now I can see that if I change the inner radius and the outer radius over here, this torus changes its shape and size. This is the power of proceduralism. Now if I zoom in a bit, I can see that these edges, they're not so smooth. So I want to make this smooth. There's a node in Blender known as Set Shades mode, which does this process for you. So, boom, it's smooth right now. So far, so good. Now, this doesn't look quite like a donut. What does a donut have? It has toppings and it has sprinkles on top of it. So, let me do the same. So, the first part was just making a topping on top of donut. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to take a few points. I'm going to take a few points on the donut, which is the top part of it. And then I'm going to instance some points on top of it. So, there's a node in Blender called distribute points on faces. I'm going to plug this over here. As soon as I plug it here, the donut just vanishes, leaving us with a bunch of few points. I'm just going to increase the density so that I can have a better view at it. Also, I'm going to join this by Control Shift and right click drag so that I can view what's actually going on over here. But I don't want the toppings to be everywhere around the donut. I mean, you can do that if that's your preference, but then I'm preferring realism, so I only want the donut to have topping on the top of it. There's a reason why it's called topping. There's a way to do this in Blender. You take the normal node and then plug it into the selection. It doesn't do anything. Why? Because the normal node extrudes its normals to in every single place. Next is X, Y, and Z. the z component is the z-axis. So your z-axis should be 1 and all the rest of them should be 0, because it should only be pointing in your z component. To do this, let me just quickly multiply by a vector which is 0, 0, 1, so that x and y are 0 and your z is 1. We can do this quickly by using a node called vector maths. So here we have the vector math node, and now we can see it's distributed all around the faces. So now I want it to affect only this part of the selection. I only want the normal part of this. So I'm just going to plug the vector into the selection. But it doesn't do anything. To do that, we can do something called as a dot product. So I'm going to hit on the multiply, the drop down menu, and then hit on the dot product. And now I'm going to plug this into the selection. Now, you can see that the selection is, the topping is only on the top of the donut. But these are all scattered around. I don't want it to cover half of my torus. Since we're making it procedural, let's make the topping procedural as well. So I'm just going to go use a compare node and place it over here. Now if you see over here, let me just increase the density real bit. Let's complete the mature. Now, if I increase this greater than value, you can see it's decreasing. You can see that the topping is decreasing. So we can control your topping in this way. So let me just quickly input with the group input node, and I'm going to plug this into here. So I'm going to name it topping. Good. So I can control my topping directly from here. These points, they don't exactly look like toppings, so you have to make them toppings. So before I go there, let me quickly add a material to my torus. So you can use the set material for your torus. And then I'm going to go into the materials tab. I'm going to rename this as to base. I don't know. What do you call the base of the torus? Does it have a specific name? I'm going to go into the shading tab. I'm also gonna go into the rendered mode because I wanna texture my base. So I change here, nothing happens because why? Because you didn't set it to your base. So now if you change it, it just changes its material. So a base of a donut is not always uniform. So you have to, oftentimes you have to combine 2 to 3 different colors. I'm gonna use 2 colors. I'm gonna mix them. So it should look like this. And now I'm gonna add them to one base color. Now it's not uniform, so I'm gonna use a noise texture, which is a queryl noise. And uses the same data. So I'm just gonna drag this down a bit. I'm gonna increase the scale a bit. It can look, this looks a bit like a donut piece. You can honestly change the color to your liking. So I'm just gonna close the shading window real quick. Now we have to deal with the topping. So we got, if you go to the render mode, we can see all of them as spheres. We don't want them to be spheres. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna convert these points into volume. Points to volume. Oh, if we do that, we can see that our results is not good, not clear. And so I'm gonna reduce the radius of each of these voxel. We can't see the results clearly yet, so I'm gonna convert this volume back into mesh again. There you see, there's a topping. See, if I go back into my modifiers and then change the topping, you can see it's changing procedurally. I like this version, so I'm going to keep this over here. I can also reduce the radius, so it's real fun to like experiment with this and just try to find out which one works for you. And now I'm going to make this smooth as well, as I mean set shade speed. Oh yeah, it's smooth right now. And now I want a material to my topping. And here comes the fun part. Oh, set material. I'm gonna use set material now. And now I'm gonna go with the shader these. I'm gonna make a new material. Name it topping. You good? Now I'm just gonna change the. I'm just gonna input the material as topping so that you can view the changes. Go to the render view. Just change my color. I'm gonna change it to something pink. Yes, and also gonna reduce the roughness down a bit because topping is usually green, right? And also going to the base, I'm gonna increase the roughness. It's rough. Good, as you can see, you can actually input the color here and change it to your liking of you doing it. And again, I'm going to randomize this color so that whenever I duplicate this, I don't want donut to have the same color. So in Blender, we can achieve this by object info, by taking the object info node, plugging the random value into the base color. So random value, how it's generated is a value generated from 0 to 1, and then a seed is taken. And seed is random. We can change it over here sadly, but we can change the random value node in the geometry nodes. We won't get to there later, but I'm gonna use color ramp real quick. In color ramp, I can take this 0 to 1. I'm gonna change it to another color. So I'm just gonna take the black. I'm just gonna make it blue. And I'm just gonna make a few points over here. You can either click on this plus button or you can use Control plus click. And it doesn't matter whether you put it evenly or not. You can just click on this button and hit distribute stops from left, and it does the work for you. Now I can change the color to my liking, so I'll make it red. I'm gonna make this yellow. As you can see, it's changing its colors, but I'm gonna duplicate this so you can really feel the effect. There. Now, what colors are toppings? Like usually, I'm just gonna make a few variations of pink. I hope they work out quite well. So these colors, they're not the same thing. They're gradients, so they're combining each of this. I don't want gradients. These are the linear gradients, so I'm gonna make them constant. See, now the colors are a bit more accurate, and they work good. Almost the red is a bit too saturated, so in the shirt, this should make a pretty good donut. So I'm just gonna delete all the donuts and work with one little donut over here. So we made a topping and we made our base. So what else do you want? You have to put some sprinkles on the top of this. So I'm just gonna go real quick. What is the shape of a sprinkle? A sprinkle is usually in cylinder, and then it has a little bit bevel on the top and the bottom. So I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna make a cylinder and keep it over here. If you have your node wrangler add-on enabled, and then if you press Control Shift and click, you can view it, or you can just plug it into the geometry directly, so you can view what's actually going on over here. And so now coming to the fun part, the sprinkles. Now I'm gonna make a cylinder. I'm I'm also gonna make a few spears. The UV spears. I'm gonna add these two objects, but you can't see anything because the UV spear is inside the cylinder. I want it to be on the top of the cylinder, and one on the top and one on the bottom. So I'm just gonna use the transform node, not the triangle, and and some geometry node. Since the depth of the cylinder is 2 meters, I want the center of my sphere to be at 1 meter. So I'm just gonna quickly make it 1. Press enter. You can see that it's right on the top of the cylinder, the sphere. So there we go. But since we are making it procedurally, let's make the height procedural as well. And let me show you this real quick. I'm gonna make a new annotation. In this part, this is here 2 meters. And this part, from the y-axis to the ground plane to the top of the cylinder, that's your 1 meter. And the center of your sphere is somewhere around here. So, if we can see something, the sphere is on the top of 1 meter from the ground plane. That is, when you divide the height of the cylinder by 2, you get the same thing, the 1 meter. 2 by 2 is 1. So, I'm going to take the group input. I'm going to plug this into the depth so that we can control this. I'm going to name this. I'm going to name this as sprinkle height. Let me also quickly make one for the radius. So, sprinkle radius. So, yes, now if we change the radius over here, you would see something goes wrong. Especially the radius. The sprinkle doesn't scale up perfectly. To do that, I need to change the sphere's radius as well. So I'm just going to take the same radius, I'm going to input into the UV sphere as well. So now, changes evenly. But, I want to change the height. So whenever I change the height, it doesn't change evenly. So what's the problem with this? So every time my height changes, I want my translation to change as well. You can see that the translation of this is 0, 0, 1. And if it goes to 1, if the height of this goes to 4, it should be at 0, 0, 2. You can see a pattern over here. That is, the height by 2 gives you a position of your z coordinate of your UV sphere. So I'm going to use a math node and combine XYZ to achieve this. So I'm going to put the combine XYZ into the translation and put it to 1 because we know that's 1. But more importantly, we know that the height divided by 2. I'm going to go into the drop down and click on divide divided by 2. It gives your XYZ's position, that space position. Now, every time I change the height, it changes uniformly. So good. I'm just going to hide all of this by pressing H. So I don't need them anymore. So, good. So now we only have the top sprinkle. We also need the bottom sprinkle. To do that, I'm gonna take the transform geometry. I'm gonna let me take the combine XYZ and the transform geometry, and then Control Shift D, duplicate it twice. Go to the bottom and plug this back into the join geometry. Let me just show you how it looks like. There's no change because here, if we go to the edit code, we can see there are 2 spheres which are overlaid on top of each other. And we don't want that to happen, so I'm gonna add the mask node. I can see what's going on over here. If I change this, there's like 2 spheres, so I'm gonna multiply by -1. So your x-axis is positive x-axis and your negative x-axis is your -x. So I'm multiplying the same value again by -1. So it stays constant. Now every time I zoom in, every time I increase the height, it stays constant. Now every time I increase the sprinkle radius, it stays constantly. So now we are done with our sprinkle. Let me just group this by selecting them all. I hit Control G. And now pressing the tab back, you get this. Let me just rename this by pressing F2 and naming sprinkle. So good. So far so good. We have a join geometry and then our sprinkle. So we need to take those sprinkles and project it on top of your geometry. How do we do that? We use the same approach we did before. You're going to distribute points evenly on faces. By this, distribute coins on faces. But I don't want this again. I'm going to join them. So we got both of them, but then they're distributed evenly. I don't want them to distribute on the bottom part. I only want them to be distributed on the topping. So there's a way to do that. Since we already figured this out before, you can take this result which we're using to control our topping and put it in our sprinkles. So I'm just going to go into geometry nodes. I'm going to take this node greater than. I'm going to plug it into the selection of the distribute points. So it only takes this selection and only puts the points on that place. So it doesn't work quite well. We can see that these points are placed on the bottom of your topping, not on the top of them. So in order to achieve that, we have to invert the normals back again. So how do you do it? Go into geometry nodes. We select these two again. You take them and duplicate them. And I'm just gonna have to multiply this entire thing by -1. So that gives me 1. And then I'm gonna use this as the input of my selection over here. And now you can see that all of these are placed on the top of my topping, not on the bottom of them. So this is what happened. So I don't want these to be my points. I want them to be my sprinkles. So how do you do that? I'm going to instance a sprinkle on every single one of these points. So I'm just going to instance on points node. And then I'm going to, these are the points which are inputted. And then instance, I'm going to choose my sprinkle. Just going to instance it over here. Oh, look at them. They're just too big. So I don't want them to happen. So I'm just going to decrease the radius of the sprinkle. A sprinkle is usually, I don't know, what's the size of a sprinkle. So I made it pretty less. I'm going to decrease the height too. So far so good. So now we can see that these sprinkles, they are not aligned properly. I mean, you can say that they're perfectly aligned, but the real world is all about imperfect. Nothing is perfect in real world. So in order to achieve realism, we have to rotate them as per normals. An easy way to do that is to add a transform node, transform geometry, and then rotate it from here. Let me quickly change my rotation to 90 degrees. But then this doesn't look quite right. Why? Because your normals are not being calculated properly. So in order to do that, this part of my rotation should be taken from this part of distribute points on faces. So every time it distributes a point, it also calculates the normal. So you have to take that and input in your instance to points as well. So when I do it, look at that. But it's not quite random. How do you get the randomness? There's this thing in Blender called the random value generator. So I can just take it. So I'm gonna use vector method to multiply a random value I'm going to combine XYZ before I do this. And I'm going to plug this into the Z axis, plug it into the vector. Now you can see that the entire thing is random. All the sprinkles are random. So I'm just going to increase the randomness. Since we are building it procedurally, you can take it as a group input. I'm going to take it as a group input. I'm going to plug the max. I'm going to change the name by pressing N and double clicking. I'm going to type randomness. Name is sprinkle randomness. So far so good. And to keep things stable, I'm just going to add the ID into the ID node. Good. I'm also going to take the seed and plug it into the input nodes. And now this is going to be a render. I'm just going to plug this into the render. And this is going to be a render, but it doesn't look quite good because we didn't color our sprinkle set, and also the height of the sprinkles is just too big. So I'm just going to reduce them. Also going to reduce the radius. Oops, that's a little bit too small. That's a little too small. I'm also going to add the count of the sprinkles. So if I increase the density over here, you can see the density of the sprinkles are also increasing. So I'm going to do the same with this density. I'm going to rename it as sprinkle density. Now, keep it on top of the seed. Weird. Now, I have to make a material for the sprinkle. And not just that, if you look closer, you can see that these sprinkles, they're not aligned perfectly. They are half. They're half. So, I'm just going to increase the height of this geometry a little bit. 0.01, so that they feel more natural. Good. So far so good. Now I'm gonna add a material to the sprinkle. I'm going to the materials tab. I'm gonna make a new material named sprinkles. And don't ask why I type all the materials in all caps. So I'm gonna go to the shader editor. I'm gonna make a object info node, because we're gonna utilize the random color for all of these sprinkles. So I'm just gonna do the same process over and over again. So color ramp, make a few stops, align these stops from left, and I'm gonna set the materials to sprinkles so that you can view what's happening, and just change these colors to whatever color you want. And also don't forget to set this to constant, so you don't get any random colors. So take the saturation up to whatever you want. I usually go with the lighter colors. You can go with whatever you want. Yellow looks fine. And yeah, I've seen green sprinkles too, so yes, that works. And white sprinkles might or might not exist, so I don't know. So I'm just gonna close this and my geometry node. And now there you go. There you have your fully procedural donut made in Blender. Now I can change my inner radius. I can change my outer radius to make whatever the donut I want, and then increase or decrease the topping. And I'm also gonna increase the sprinkle height. You can just go bonkers with it. Just feel free to experiment with this, and then yeah, that's your Blender tutorial for a procedural donut. See you next one.